Hi everyone, it's Paul Tilley and welcome to MR2350. Today, Unit 3, Websites. So in this particular unit, what we're doing is developing an understanding of websites and what the purpose is, how they're arranged, issues with regards to the development of them, the idea of the mobile type website and what's different with mobile, how the security systems work in them, and how payment systems can be arranged for them. So, let's begin. First of all, what I wanted to make sure is that you're looking at Unit 3 in the course. So take a look at the content for Unit 3 and also read chapters 4 and 5 of the textbook. So the very first thing we're interested in here is what is the process in order to make a website reality in your business. So we're going to take a look at the process in terms of a series of steps. We're going to think about what our vision is for the website. We're going to think about revenue models. We're going to think about who the target audience is, what the characteristics of that target audience is, figure out where our content's coming from, conduct a SWOT analysis in order to think about our strategy for building a website, develop an e-commerce presence map, develop a timeline, and develop a budget. So those are the basic ingredients that we'll be looking at in this first part. First, we have to ask ourselves, what exactly are we doing here? What is the purpose of our basic website? This is what's called our visioning process. What we mean by visioning is thinking ahead to what an ideal website would look like once it's done. It's going out and envisioning what we want to have happen here. So before we can plan and actually build an e-commerce presence, we need to have a vision of what you hope to accomplish and how you hope to accomplish it. This includes an identification of who the target audience is, where we sit in the market space, kind of a strategic analysis of what's going on, the idea of the price, the place, the product, and promotion, this marketing mix, and most importantly, a timeline for when we want to achieve this vision. The next thing we need to be able to do once we've got it squared away, what we're looking to do, our basic destination, is to think about, okay, what are we doing in this in order to make money? How are we going to make money out of this website? What is the process? And this is what's called the business or revenue model. We're trying to say to ourselves, how do this generate dollars for us? And there's all kinds of various models out there for that. Essentially, when we think of a business model, we've got to think about what is the value proposition? What is it we're offering here of value? What are the key resources that are required? What are the key activities that are required? What channels, marketing channels, are we using? Who are the key partners in this? How are we going to establish, develop, manage our customer relationship? The revenue streams. How are we going to generate dollars from this? Our cost structure. What's it going to cost to do all this? And how we can best reach the customer segment. If we think about a business revenue model, we got to think about, well, okay, like how do we actually generate the dollars? You know, there's advertising, for example, could be helpful, or if people will buy a subscription, if we can charge some sort of a transactional fee, we just make money from sales, a traditional sales model, or we can connect ourselves with another company and affiliate ourselves with someone else in order to generate some dollars there. Let's think about this imagination process in terms of who is it that is going to be looking at this? And is it the people that we want to target in our business? So we have to develop a clear understanding of our target audience. Who is it we're selling to? Are they our primary customers? Are they the best customers to sell to? You know, are we doing the right things here? So we really got to ask a couple questions in order to help determine that. We got to ask, who is our target audience and where can we best reach them? Because not all target audiences will use the same method of contact. And if we're thinking about e-commerce, is our target market really, or our target audience really geared up for e-commerce? Are they willing to accept that? So these are often defined by demographic information, age, gender, these sorts of things. Behavioral patterns, what type of lifestyle they have, their current consumption patterns, what they buy now, how they buy what they buy, how often they use digital, do they buy online? Do they have content creation preferences? Do they go towards social media? Do they go towards blogs? Do they go towards sites? Are they more visually oriented? So they're looking at sites like Pinterest. And what are the buyer's personas? Now, can we paint a picture of a buyer? What exactly is our typical customer? We also think about, most importantly, the demographic information. How old are they? How much income do they have? What's their gender? Where do they live? In some cases, these might be very obvious for our customers, but others, it may not be. So we need to really get a good handle on who our target audience is by taking an assessment of those issues. We also need to characterize our marketplace, which is a little broader than our target market. Where is our customer? Who is our customer? What does their situation or the market situation look like? So, we got to think about a whole bunch of things there with regards to the features of the marketplace. Again, demographics come into play, but in addition, there's a whole bunch of other things. And we want to think about things like who our competitors are there substitute products? Is the market growing or receding? Is the marketplace shifting from offline to online or online to offline? If so, is the market moving towards one or the other? Is it traditional website, a mobile platform that would be best focus for them? Is there some special role for a mobile presence? What percentage of the target audience use websites, smartphones, tablets? Are they more mobile-based or more seat-based? What social networks do they use? Do they use Facebook? Do they use Twitter? Instagram? Where are we to? What's the buzz of our products? Is there a buzz for our products? Are there buzzes for our competitors? Are there potential customers talking about our products and services? And how are they talking about them? What are they saying? How many blogs focus on our products? Are people talking about it, speaking about it, demonstrating it, using it? How many Twitter posts? How many Facebook likes? How many Facebook posts? How many links? These sorts of things. And I suppose we need to look at our substitutes. Are there other products that can do the same job that we can do? And will people switch easily? Do we have high switching costs? We also got to think about our content. Where's it coming from? What kind of content is out there? Websites are composed of lots and lots of pages. Man, they can get pretty big pretty quick. And where's that content coming from? Is it text-based, graphic-based, photo-based, video-based, sound-based? Is it, for example, podcast type thing? This content is really the things that search engines hook to, and we really need to think about it so that when we make a website, the search engines will be able to pick them up and display them on people's screens. So content is probably the most important item in order to get in front of people's eyeballs. So there's different kinds of content, and we should be aware there's static content. Static content just means that it's content that stays the same. It doesn't change. We could think of a picture of our product, for example. It is not changing all the time. So product descriptions, photos, text, once you create that, you can use that for a good while. But there's also dynamic content. And dynamic content is content that changes fairly regularly. And you can think about fairly regularly right down to the minute. So dynamic content is very easily, or it's designed to be easily set up so that every individual will see content that appeals to them. Okay, so it's tailored more or less. And so tailored content is obviously much more intricate to put in place than static content. We also have user-generated content. Now, users are good, credible sources of content. We see people using your products, talking about your products and the like. So that's user-generated. The downside is you don't have any real control of what the user says. We also have external websites. Where are you drawing information from, linking it to external websites, and also it's good in the sense that it's easy to find, but again, you have to manage to ensure that you're getting the right kind of vibe that you want out of that. In order to really think about what is the kind of vibe we want and what kind of product offerings do we have, you really need to do some sort of a strategic assessment of your product, your business, in order to be able to help you kind of figure out what needs to go on that website. You should be, at this point in time, have had some access or had some use in the SWOT analysis. Now, the SWOT analysis is simply a tool that assesses your internal strengths and weaknesses and your external opportunities and threats. And the idea behind that is to get an idea of what you do well, what you need to improve, what opportunities exist out there, and what things that you should avoid or concern yourself with in order to move forward. When you do an assessment such as a SWOT analysis for your product and your e-commerce presence, you should be able to get out of that things that really stand out, that are positive, and that can avail of opportunities that are coming up in the market. So it's really a process that gets you thinking about how your product fits and how you can use it to leverage the most benefit out of your product. From the SWOT analysis, what is your presence going to be? So the e-commerce roadmap is really what this is called, describes the platforms and related activities you will need to think about whenever you develop an e-commerce presence. You're going to be on Facebook, you're going to be on YouTube, where are you going to be? Your potential customers use those various devices in different types during the day and involve themselves in different conversations depending on what you're doing. So touching base with your friends, viewing photos on Instagram, tweeting, these sorts of things, reading a blog. So again, if you have a good idea of what your market is, your target market is, what your relative strengths are, you can connect them to. So you need to think about these points as touch points. So this is where individual consumers get to make a decision about your product. Is it useful? Is it not useful? Is it something they can use? And then to spur their interest. We also need to develop a timeline. It's important to have a plan that has a measurable timeline on it. So it's a good idea to put a time frame that's reasonable, attainable for developing your e-commerce presence. You should break your project down into chunks. So basically you're thinking about various phases. So in, for example, this graphic that I have here, I have the planning phase, the website development phase, the web implementation phase, the social media plan phase, social media implementation phase, and the mobile plan phase. This is something you can do in terms of a chronological or a what needs to be done first, second, and third type setup. And you should be able to get a reasonable time frame based on that. The following step-by-step procedure will allow you to do this in a more efficient way. Identify your tasks, rank the tasks in order of importance, develop time requirements, and develop a schedule that works. Next, we need to develop a preliminary budget. And a preliminary budget is really thinking about what are the revenues that are going to come in that you anticipate, and what are your expenses? How is money going to flow out? And when we think about how money flows out, every website is different. We have to recognize that depending on your needs, it's going to cost a different amount. However, generally proportions, regardless of what size the budget, are about the same. Here I've got this components of a website budget figure here that shows you the various proportions that you should consider. Some of these costs are one-offs, others are ongoing, but you can imagine that you're going to have to spend money into the future in order to keep your website up to date. So in order to start this process, we got to discover the requirements, consider site design and coding, consider domain hosting. Where are we getting all that to? In the pre-launch, you got to think about registering a domain name, getting a site hosting, the architecture, the basic design of it, the wireframes and templates, the content planning, and then you need to be able to get the creation of the website done and integrating the technology into it, such as payment systems and the like. Finally, we need to be able to look at search engine optimization. In other words, how do we set it up so that we get the best possible crawl from various search engines so that you end up higher up on their search list than any other firm. In terms of launch and operation, this is where the ongoing costs come from. You got to think about marketing, telecommunications, the software, the hardware, the continuous improvement, and the actual fulfillment. So as you're selling product, how are you delivering it to the customer? So you think about these factors whenever you think about implementation. What do I need in terms of management? What do I need in software? What do I need in architecture, the actual hardware? What do I need in design? What do I need in telecommunications? And what do you need in people, human resources? To make it functional, websites should meet the following category. We got to think about the fact that it displays goods, it provides the product information, it has an ability to personalize or customize for a given product, got to be able to engage customers, particularly in conversations that allow people to go back and forth with the company. We've got to be able to execute a transaction with it. We got to be able to collect and gather and database customer information so that we can use it in the future. We got to be able to provide after-sales support. We've got to coordinate marketing and advertising. We've got to understand how the marketing should be done effectively. And we got to provide product and supplier links so that people can get connected. You can imagine that there are ongoing life cycle costs, and these costs have to be considered in terms of every single website. So the system development life cycle is the methodology for understanding the business objectives of any system and design any appropriate solution for that. So this method helps in creating documents and communicate objectives, important milestones, use resource management. So there's really 5 major steps involved in system development lifecycle. First, there's system analysis and planning, where we identify the business objectives, system functionality, and information requirements. We develop a list of precise information requirements. You can begin by considering just how all this functionality is going to be delivered. The system design component, which is developing a description of the main components of the system and their relationship with one another. System design really has 2 components: the logical design, which talks about the flow of data, and physical design, which translates that logical design into physical, what it looks like on a screen. We've got to build the system. System building can either be outsourced or insourced. Outsourcing comes with some benefits and costs, and in-house comes with some benefits and costs. You need to make that decision. We'll talk about that in a minute. We also need system testing. Before the system ever goes live, we need to make sure that it has that workability that we envisaged. And finally, we got implementation and maintenance, which is the ongoing maintenance to keep that system working and doing what it's supposed to do. So in terms of making this decision of should you build in-house or should you build outside? Well, in terms of in-house, the major benefits of in-house really come down to these. Inside knowledge of the company culture. You know your own company. The organization will have a better ability to control the entirety of the project and be able to know it intricately. The in-house developer has a personal interest in the organization, so he's going to do a good job, or she's going to do a very good job at doing a website that reflects the company. And coordinating with the developer is so much easier with in-house. However, it comes with some downside too. If the web page design is more complicated than first expected, it could take a lot more time, you might have thought, and a lot more other resources. If the organization doesn't already have an IT team, it's going to need one, and that's going to be expensive. Web development is not part of the overall job description. Someone's going to have to take it on, and that's going to require some absorbing of duties that could create a stress inside your organization, because if you're asking people to take on more duties, it usually comes with more costs. And obviously, people are going to want more for that. What if we go outside? Well, if we think about going outside by hiring an outside agency to create the organization's website, it takes tremendous load off the staff. Get someone who knows what they're doing to do it. If you or your firm just don't have the time, resources, creativity, and experience to design a web page, hiring someone makes logical sense. But contracting with an outside firm that's proficient in web development, you're hiring experience and expertise that you may not have in-house. Once you tell the design team your vision and information, they'll figure out the rest. You just need to get them started. So it could be a relatively stress-free. Provided you do that part well, you'll end up getting what you want. And a dedicated web design agency is more familiar with web design processes, development, what works, what doesn't work. So again, it helps optimize the whole process a little bit better. But it's not perfect. There are disadvantages. On the downside, communicating your vision to the outside agency takes time and energy, and you need to get it right to make sure they provide you what you want. The process of finding the right agency and getting them to do what you want to do is a bit of a challenge. And you could be disappointed if you don't do it well. Agencies can also be expensive. It takes time, energy, and money. And whether the choice is to develop in-house or outside, the choice to use pre-designed web templates can cut development time and cost dramatically. But the trade-off is you lose that flexibility. When you're thinking about a platform, you need to think about things like speed, capacity, scalability. So buying a platform to put it on, getting a website designed to work on that platform requires some expertise. We have to think about security, file transfer, search engine optimization, ability to capture data, email, and management tools whenever we're in that process. Mobile is really something that has taken hold in the last number of years. A mobile website is almost critical today because we need to ask ourselves, how are customers going to look at this? And the vast majority of customers are going to look at it on a mobile device. Considering that 90% of all internet users access the web at least part of the time on mobile devices, businesses today need to develop websites that have mobile ability. And that physically means you're going to look at something on a small screen. So you're going to have to develop either native apps, or you're going to need some sort of a software that allows you to produce scalable type web pages. So when we think about a mobile presence, then we really need to think about things like our hardware. It's going to be physically smaller, so you need to think about font size and these sorts of things, or connectivity. You're going to be shoving video through, because if you do, that's going to take up a lot of bandwidth, and it's going to use a lot of basic data for users. They may or may not like that. What the display looks like is going to have to require some changes. And the basic interface is going to be touchscreen as opposed to buttons, so you need to think about how that works. So most companies today need to look at a strategy for developing a web page that either is focused on setting it up for mobile first, meaning that the idea of this is to be able to be on a phone, or it's going to be some form of responsive design that allows the web page to automatically figure out what it's displaying on and adjust accordingly. And this is really where this adaptive design is coming. So most modern websites have this adaptive design. We also got to think about security. Man, if you're dealing with money, you got to start talking about security. We got to think about, how do we manage our data integrity? In other words, making sure nobody else can get a hold of the data. Non-repudiation. When we send them something in the mail, we want to get paid for it. They can't undo that deal. So we need to be able to make sure that the contract is done electronically and that it's followed through on. Authentication. Are we knowing we're dealing with the right person? Confidentiality. How do we make sure that the data doesn't get widely spread? Privacy. That's an obvious one. And availability. Is this up and running 24/7? There's a lot of security threats out there, including malicious code, unwanted programs, phishing, hacking, vandalism, credit card theft, identity fraud. We have to build a website that manages all of those and make sure that people are not put at harm's way. So we really need to develop a security plan. We got to think about, how do we assess the risk? First, what is the risk? Put plans in place to manage that risk, the implementation, create a security team, and perform audits to ensure that security is indeed managed. Finally, we need to look at payment systems. How are we going to get this paid? So we think about online credit card. We need to be able to allow for payments. So we think about, who's involved there, the customer, the merchants, the clearinghouse, merchant bank, these sorts of things. We got to think about, are there alternative payment systems that we should set up, like PayPal, which is a third-party payment? Mobile payment systems, cryptocurrencies, which are new and not really well understood in the industry yet, and electronic processing of payments. So that summarizes that Unit 3. If you have any questions, let me know.